shot down that Chinese communist spy balloon that was meandering around over our heads for about a week or more is finally out of the sky, and I feel a little less communist already. And it's good news. We're going to go through and take a look at the actual shooting and evisceration of this spy balloon before we go over and see what the Chinese had to say about this, because they posted a very angry letter on their ministry website over there at chinese.gov.cn.communist China. And so we'll take a look at that, as well as this news story that Trump apparently had some balloon issues, typo there, balloon issues when this was a problem back during his administration. Ratcliffe and Pompeo say not even true at all. So a lot to get to. Now, first, the big shot that we all are here for. Shot down. Now, this was a fun clip that I saw. You've probably seen it many times, but this is another one that I saw that was apparently coming from R&A, which I don't know where that is. You can see that in the bottom left there. The commie balloon is floating around right here in the center of your screen. This was the live reaction at Myrtle Beach when the balloon got blown out of the sky.
Checking Twitter on several different official... Oh,
there it is. Poof.
I believe it just happened there.
There it is.
That was it. Live, raw, and unfiltered. It appears that China spy balloon
is no longer a China spy balloon. It's gone. And so the news anchors are just sitting there watching it. Breaking news. They're probably going to shoot it down. Over the weekend, if you remember, they were locking down all the airspace. And so in South Carolina and sort of different areas protruding out into the ocean was all no-fly zone so that they could take this thing out. Here it is one more time.
Checking Twitter on several different official...
Sorry, President Xi. Your little spy operation
and unfiltered. It appears that China spy balloon
is exploded. Good riddance. Now, a lot of people are wondering why that took so long. Here's another close-up angle of this for just a little bit more enjoyment. Ultra high res telephoto zoom, the Chinese communist balloon blown to smithereens. There it is. Get out of here, commies. Now, this came over from somebody on Instagram called @casualphotoholic. And so you can see really nice photograph there. And you can see the big, long sort of thing hanging off of it as it's floating around. Hard to see where exactly it hits. Looks like it might, I guess that is what they would call the payload, right? Last week we talked and heard from Patrick Ryder, and he said that it was carrying a payload, and it certainly looks like this operation here, right? Looks like that big protrusion that is sort of hanging out. And it looks like the missile, which I think we're going to hear is a Sidewinder missile, hits it right there, which is kind of a bummer, huh? Kind of would like to see what all that was, rather than hitting it there. Some people think maybe it would be nice to hit it up here and just let it fall to the thing, rather than exploding the whole thing. I don't know, right? Unfortunately, I don't fly fighter pilots. I know that stuff, but I would, it's just kind of, we'll see. See if they can retrieve anything. But I'm guessing that it blew up most of the payload is my point, right? Looks like as it's falling to the ground, that's pretty much eviscerated there, unfortunately. So all the hard drives, all the technology, all whatever's in there, it all got hit. And then the balloon comes falling down behind it. So, all right, well, we'll see what they're able to uncover. But we do know the Chinese are not very happy about it. New York Times was responding. We're going to go to the U.S. response, and Karine talks about it. Ned talks about it. Congress is upset about it. But what do the Chinese say? Well, the New York Times is responding. They say, China finds itself with limited options now after the U.S. shoots down its balloon. And we're going to go through the official statement from Beijing here in a minute. But some background from Chris Buckley. He says, after an American fighter jet shot down a Chinese communist balloon that had floated across the United States for the better part of a week, the reaction from Beijing, defensive, angered. That they flew a spy balloon into our country and then we blew it out of the sky. They're upset about that? Okay. But they're hedging its options. Illustrated the challenges facing China's leader as he tries to stabilize relations. Now, hours after the balloon was struck by a Sidewinder missile and crumpled into the waters off South Carolina, the Chinese Foreign Ministry declared strong discontent and protest and doubled down on its position that the balloon was a civilian research airship blown way off course. Washington, not Beijing, had broken the rules, said the Chinese ministry. Now, I went over there and actually took a screenshot and a translated version of their statement from the Chinese ministry. You see here we have our red pen. Let's make this a little bit thicker, a little bit more communistic-y for this PDF here. Oh, that's nice and thick there. They're going to like that one. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement on the U.S. claim that it shot down the Chinese unmanned airship. This is translated from Mandarin from the Chinese website called the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They issue a statement on the claim of U.S. shooting down the unmanned airship. They say China expresses strong dissatisfaction and protest. Wow. Against the U.S.'s use of force to attack a civilian unmanned airship. Chinese side has repeatedly informed the U.S. side after verification that the airship is for civilian use and entered the U.S. force majeure, right outside of our control, which was completely accidental, said the Chinese. China clearly requires the U.S. to handle it properly in a calm, professional, restrained manner. China says that a spokesman for the U.S. DoD also stated that the balloon will not pose a military and personnel threat to ground personnel. Under such circumstances, the U.S. insists on using force, obviously overreacting, seriously violating international practice, say the Chinese. Whoa. China, they write, will resolutely safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of relevant comp while reserving the right to make further necessary reactions. Wow. So the Chinese are kind of pissed, huh? So they send a spy balloon over. Our inept government allows it to float around for a week, just Hoover vacuuming up everything, sucking up all the data on nuclear silos. And then we finally take it out of the sky, and now the Chinese are pissed. So we talked about this morning on our members-only stream on watchingthewatchers.locals.com. But it sort of feels like this might be a whole new front opening up in World War III, which we've already talked a lot about. That one started last February when Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's the first front of World War III. And so this is a brand new one that is now percolating all over a spy balloon. And if you remember, in prior world wars, they don't end in a year. It's a 4 to 6 year operation. And so something like this is about what you'd expect in season 1 of a 4-season arc. So it's very interesting. China's upset about it, and they don't apologize. They don't say sorry for the confusion. Sorry, we spent all of your time and money and effort on this little balloon. We know it's not a civilian balloon. We know it's not a weather balloon. We know they can control it because we heard that from Patrick Ryder last week. And now they threaten everybody else. They sort of are basically you're going to resolutely safeguard your legitimate rights. What? And you're going to take further reaction? Okay, well, react all you want, I guess. But the New York Times says, well, their options are kind of limited. I mean, what are they going to do? Chinese officials had been preparing to host the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken. We're going to hear from the State Department in another segment. For talks this week in Beijing. Technology barrier bans in Taiwan, a lot of issues were going to be addressed. Beijing's reaction to the bipartisan furor in the United States over the balloon suggested that Chinese leaders were baffled that those planned talks had been upstaged by what they described as an innocent mistake, if you believe that for a minute. But China also suggested that it could also somehow retaliate against the American military's actions. What are they going to do? There's Blinken. The Chinese vice foreign minister called Xi Feng told an unnamed senior diplomat from the American embassy in Beijing that the United States had distorted the facts over the balloon, and now they've damaged efforts to stabilize relationships. Mr. Xi said that they urged the United States not to take steps that further harm our interests or escalate and expand tensions. The National Defense of China, the National Ministry, which speaks for the military of China, also called it an excessive reaction. They said, "We solemnly protest the U.S. action, and we retain the right to use the necessary means to deal with similar circumstances," said China. Yeah, well, okay. So I guess if the U.S. is flying any balloons over there illegally, they can blow them out of the sky. All right. That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Calibrating China's reaction will be tricky. China's in a very tight geopolitical spot. Their internet is an echo chamber. Xi has his hands full with domestic strains. Economies all over the place. They had zero COVID policies, which was a disaster for them. He's beginning his third 5-year term, saying that it would be a big problem if they made a strategic move out of this. The more they huff and puff, the more it reduces their credibility. Now, we'll see if the tensions continue to escalate and what the White House has to say about it. But a lot of people in China were very happy about it. One site in China called Weibo said that their leaders should get tougher. Maybe, one commenter said, maybe they should even shoot down an American plane. They took down one of our balloons, go take out one of their pilots. And those conversations are bubbling up to the surface on their social media. So we'll see where that goes. Now let's go over and see what else is happening. So the ministry says they're upset about it. They reserve the right. The Chinese are limited in their capability to respond, but we'll see what they do. Now the White House is facing a little bit of a PR problem. And if you also noticed over the weekend, there were all these interesting stories that got released that Trump had seen tons of balloons and he just let them fly all over the place too. In other words, what Joe Biden did was just regular, ordinary, par for the course. He was just following Trump's precedent, right? Let's go through the story because it came over from CNN and others, and we're going to see whether it's confirmed or not from Ratcliffe and Pompeo. But CNN published this, of course. Natasha Bertrand says that Chinese spy balloons under Trump were not discovered until after Biden took office. You're kidding me. Man. He found them too. So not only did he find his own Chinese spy balloon problem, but he also found Trump's also, which is crazy. You know, don't you hate that? And I wonder if he found anything else problematic there also. Like, did he also find like a bunch of extra inflation lying around also? Did he also find a bunch of extra illegal immigration lying around or like an extra war with Ukraine or something? Like it all happened with Trump too. It's like he did it too, you know. All that kind of crap from him all over the place. Okay, so he says that we just discovered new balloons that make his balloon catastrophe look better. All right, so here we have it from CNN. Now, the transiting, they say, we're going to check this. The transiting of the 3 suspected Chinese spy balloons over the continental U.S. during the Trump administration was only discovered after Joe Biden took office. Weird. Weird. Can they look back in time? Now, a senior administration official told CNN on Sunday. So put a pin in this because Karine gets asked about this later. The official did not say how or when those incidents were discovered. The official said that the intelligence community is prepared to offer briefings to key Trump administration officials about the Chinese surveillance program, which the Biden administration believes had been deployed in several countries across 5 continents over the last several years. After the Biden administration disclosed that this had been hovering over Montana, Pentagon said that, oh, balloons? Oh, no, Trump had tons of balloons. His middle name was Balloon. But others in the Trump administration, like Secretary Mark Esper, said, no, not so fast. I'm a little bit surprised by that. Said, I don't ever recall somebody coming into my office or reading anything that the Chinese had a surveillance balloon across our United States. Never happened. Trump said the same thing on True Social. Said that's all fake disinfo. John Bolton, the former national security advisor under Trump, also pushed back on the assertion that balloons surveilled the U.S. Did the Biden administration invent a time machine, says John Bolton? Which is exactly right. What is the basis of this new detection? Very convenient. What else did they detect? You're kidding me. But added that he would take a briefing from the current administration to see what they offer for us. Bolton said the very fact, if it is a fact, that the Chinese tried this before, should have alerted us and caused us to take action before it came moseying around Montana and all of middle America. The Biden administration official now says the incidents were not discovered until after Trump had already left, but didn't say how they discovered it or where. So it's just a total mess over there. Another Chinese balloon has also transited the continental U.S. briefly at the beginning of the Biden administration. So this is not the first sighting. It's only the first sighting that has come this far in. Briefly at the beginning of the Biden administration. So they're just testing, right? They're just probing. This is like any real-time strategy game, any board game you've ever played. You just poke your opponent. You just needle them a little bit. How are they going to react to this? And then, so they fly one, nearby, and then they fly one all the way down. Gosh, so dumb. The senior administration official said that with regard to the balloon shot down on Saturday, the analysis into its capabilities are ongoing. Republicans have criticized. We're obviously going to talk a lot about that as the story goes on. But the main headline was, well, Trump did it too. If you're mad at Joe Biden, don't forget that Trump had his balloons too. And so take it up with him. Now, Ratcliffe, you know him, the former director of national intelligence. The DNI is the agency that essentially connects all of the intelligence agencies. John Ratcliffe is here, and he's asked about this so-called alleged balloon hovering issue during the Trump eras. Did you, Ratcliffe, see any balloons when Trumpo was in charge?
That there were 3 balloons, Chinese spies during that they were not. Can you tell us?
Well, it's not true. I can refute it. Former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper refuted it yesterday. Former Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo has refuted it. But Maria, the American people can refute it for themselves. Do you remember during the Trump administration when photographers on the ground and commercial airline pilots were talking about a spy balloon over the United States that people could look up and see even with the naked eye, and that a media that hated Donald Trump wasn't reporting? I don't remember that either because it didn't happen. As I said to you earlier, this was unprecedented. We have never had a circumstance where an adversary has had spy craft over our country, our continental United States, posing a threat for the better part of a week straight. And that's why I said to you before, not only is it unprecedented, but the damage from this is incalculable, both from an intelligence standpoint and the possible payloads. You talked a little bit earlier about the different types of payloads that a stratospheric balloon could carry. Those possibilities are limited only by your imagination. But what we do know is none of those are possible to be deployed against the United States if a stratospheric balloon isn't allowed to traipse across our countryside for 4 straight days, something that has never happened before.
4 straight days. Yeah, across middle America, but like it crossed in Alaska way earlier than that. It was up there in the Aleutian Islands before, in January even. So he says that, this is a bad situation. It could have anything, drop anything, gobble up anything. One of the main defenses is you keep it out. Now, there was another interesting angle to this that we talked about last week. One thesis for why the U.S. military may have allowed this thing to just meander on out was because they were intercepting the data, or they were preventing the data from leaving. They were monitoring the communication channels. This clip is Mike Pompeo. Of course, he's former CIA director, all sorts. This guy was former Secretary of State. He is, feted out the wazoo. And they brought him on. Now, this is a clip from before the balloon was shot down, so it's going to be a little bit out of context. But he does say that he hopes that what he hears is true, that maybe they were able to stop the transmission from occurring, which was kind of interesting that somebody so plugged in, somebody who is ex-CIA director, would know that and then reveal that on the news.
We bring in former CIA director and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He is a Fox News contributor and author of his new book, Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love. And that is a title that I think is quite relevant. I think it's astonishing to hear that Chinese sound.
Yeah, Martha, I agree with you. It should be surprising to most Americans. We ought to bring this darn thing down. We have the capabilities and tools to do that. I'm confident that we could have done so safely. I think we probably still can do so safely, and we ought to do that. I'm happy to hear. I hope it's true that we've stopped it from transmitting data that it was collecting. And the Chinese say this was just a weather surveillance device.
So hopefully they've stopped it from transmitting data that it was collecting, right? He hopes that's true, and that might be part of the reason why they were allowing it to mosey on all over the place. But who knows?
That's just fundamentally inconsistent with what the Chinese are doing all across America today. And Martha, as much as the intelligence, the fact that they've now penetrated our airspace, put a very visible symbol of their country over our airspace, and we have done nothing. This is a green light for bad guys all around the world, including Xi Jinping. There is the military significance, but also the political fact that Xi Jinping is clearly pro-Biden administration is serious about never giving an inch about protecting our country. And to date, it doesn't appear to me that he's prepared to push back against them in any serious way.
Yeah, not at all. In fact, it sounds like they're just going to kind of try to let the whole thing slide. We're going to hear from the White House in a minute. But of course, there is going to be more reaction from China when that comes in. We will see what they say.